And we're back. Welcome to my predictions for the Europa League playoff first legs, the second of 3 European predictions videos this week. Reminder, of course, that tomorrow morning we will be doing all of this for the Europa Conference League playoff first legs. And if you missed yesterday's video covering all of the Champions League playoff first legs taking place tonight and tomorrow, you can check that out by checking out the link at the top of your screen right now. And a reminder that at lunchtime today, I will be doing a one-off video for covering the Everton-Liverpool Premier League game taking place tomorrow. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on that one individual prediction and, of course, tomorrow's Europa Conference League video as well. And drop a like on this video if you enjoy all of my prediction series as well. Let's look at the 8 matches that will be taking place on Thursday in the Europa League then. And you will see that at the top of your screen are Europa League results so far. A 76 out of 114 after the league phase with 13 correct scores. So not as many results in the Europa League, but more correct scores as compared to the Champions League. And I'll say this straight off the bat, this has been such a tough competition to call already over the course of the last few months. And now you put all the teams that have been sort of hit and miss in this competition so far and have all of them playing against each other. All these games taking place on Thursday are so tough to call. And genuinely, I would say this at the top of the video, I can legitimately see all 3 possibilities in all 8 games taking place today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you guys with as much information as I possibly can regarding each of these team setups going into this match. And we will try our best to come up with the best possible outcome for all 8 of these matches. So without any further ado, let's get into it. There are 4 early kickoffs. There are 4 late kickoffs. So let's kick off ourselves with the first of those early kickoffs, and that is Midtjylland taking on Real Sociedad. Now, the important thing to note for this is that Midtjylland still haven't restarted their season yet. Their winter break ends, should I say, this weekend coming. So they've still not played a competitive match since their 2-2 draw with Fenerbahce on match day 8, but they have been playing and winning some friendlies over the last couple of weeks to keep themselves fit. For Real Sociedad, they won their final match day with a 2-0 victory over PAOK and have followed that up with back-to-back home wins domestically, but did lose their last away game to Osasuna a couple of weeks ago. So a little bit of an interesting dynamic coming into this. In terms of injuries and suspensions for Midtjylland, they look like they are still going to be without their goalkeeper Olafsson. He's still yet to recover from his broken arm. And for Sociedad, their defender Zubeldia, I can never say his name properly because I always get confused with Zubamendi, but is the defender Zubeldia who could still be missing. He's picked up a slight knee injury that kept him out of their result at the weekend. In my opinion, though, from what I've seen, certainly over the last couple of seasons, when it matters, Real Sociedad do tend to turn up, as we saw with their victory over PAOK a couple of weeks ago, which was a game that I actually predicted that they wouldn't win, and they did. So I'm not going to make that same mistake again. I think with Midtjylland not being quite up to full match pace, even though they've had a couple of decent results in the last couple of match days, I'm backing the side that's got more experience at this level, and I'm going for a 1-0 victory to Real Sociedad to kick off these Europa League predictions. That then takes us to the sides that, albeit have the biggest split in where they finished in the table, joint with the Twente Bodo Glimt game later on. We have Fenerbahce, who finished 24th, taking on an Anderlecht side that finished 10th. However, it is the side that finished lower down the table, the Turkish home side, that have the much better form coming into this match over the last few games. They are 12 games unbeaten in all competitions. They have won 9 of those 12, but 2 of those 12 that have been draws have been their last 2 Europa League matches. So just bear that one in mind before going, oh, Fenerbahce are going to win this one. For Anderlecht, it's only 1 win in 4. That was victory against Royal Antwerp at the weekend, but they lost their last 2 Europa League matches, which is the only reason they're in these playoffs in the first place. If you remember just a few weeks back, Anderlecht was sitting 3rd in the table, having a really good tournament, but 2 defeats in 2 matches has meant they've dropped out the top 8 and ended up finishing 10th and now they have to travel to Turkey in what I think is a really, really tough game for them. Now, again, in terms of injuries and suspensions for Jose Mourinho's side, they have lost Soyuncu. He picked up an injury in Fenerbahce's win at the weekend and are still without their first choice goalkeeper Livakovic. However, new signing from Saudi Arabia, Anderson Talisca, the Brazilian, has come in and already hit the ground running, scoring on his debut, and I think he could have a pretty big impact on this tie. As for Anderlecht, like I say, poor run of form, and there is some doubts over the likes of Jan Vertonghen and Samuel Edozie and a couple of others that do usually at the bare minimum feature in their starting lineup. So I just think with the form Fenerbahce are in, with the slight couple of concerns that Anderlecht are having, especially with Fenerbahce being the home side, I'm backing them to get the result in this first leg. And I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to Fenerbahce. From Turkey, we then move on to Hungary, where we find Ferencvaros taking on Viktoria Plzen. Plzen are actually one of those two sides that we just mentioned that got one of those victories over Anderlecht in the last 2 match days. As for the home side, Ferencvaros, they got victory over AZ Alkmaar in their final match day to secure their spot in the playoffs to play this match against Plzen. However, since then, they are winless in all of their last 3 domestic matches, but a lot of those have been away from home, and it's actually worth noting that Ferencvaros haven't lost a single home game in all competitions since losing at home on match day 2 to Tottenham, and they've won all of their other 3 home matches in this competition. So it is worth noting that, because even though Plzen had a very good tournament, especially in this tournament, Ferencvaros are a very strong side at home. For Plzen, they've not been as consistent as you would probably expect from them. They were beaten on the final match day and then lost again domestically after that result. And now they have striker Daniel Vasilin suspended for the first leg of this tie as well. And I do think it's going to be a bit of a struggle for them. What I would say is that Plzen are always good for a goal. They've scored goals both home and away in all of their last 6 European matches, which for a side that not many people tend to fancy, I think is quite an achievement. So I would back them to get a goal here. But as I've mentioned a couple of times already, Ferencvaros, very strong side at home this season, especially in Europe. So I'm going to have them to just edge this opening tie by the narrow scoreline of 2-1. But we've seen it enough times in this competition already. On their day, Plzen can get a result against anyone. The final early kickoff then sees Union Saint-Gilloise taking on Ajax, and these are 2 sides on really, really good form at the moment. Both sides have won 4 of their last 5, the one of those 5 both being shock defeats in the Europa League. Union lost to Rangers and Ajax lost away to RFS, which was a real shock. But both of them have managed to bounce back since those disappointing defeats. Union, as we said, have got their wins back domestically, and Ajax have even got wins over the likes of UCL side Feyenoord in their domestic league over the last couple of weeks. There's also no fresh injury concerns for either side coming into this one as well, following their respective victories at the weekend. Although there is going to be one absentee for Union, they are going to be without Sykes, their defender. He is suspended after picking up 3 yellow cards over the course of the league phase, so he cannot play in this opening leg. There's also no head-to-head record to speak of between these 2 sides either, so we're really clutching at straws as to try and figure out who is going to come out on top in this one. For me, it just comes down to who turns up on the night. I would say over the course of the 2 legs, I would certainly back Ajax to get the result, but with the Belgian side being in the home side in the first leg, I would expect them to get something. I don't think it's going to be a win, though. I think this is going to be our first draw of the playoffs, and I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw for Union and Ajax in that final early kickoff. That then takes us to the later kickoffs, and we'll stick with the Dutch as we now have AZ Alkmaar taking on Galatasaray, and this is a game of suspensions. We've just spoken about the suspension for Sykes for Union. Well, AZ have got Bilic suspended after he picked up 3 yellow cards, with the final one coming on match day 8. But it's for Galatasaray where the suspensions are most critical. Former Tottenham defender Davinson Sanchez, final yellow card on match day 8. Lucas Torreira, former Arsenal midfielder, 3rd yellow card on match day 8. And Victor Osimhen, the star striker, third yellow card on match day 8, and all 3 of those players, the spine of their team, are all going to be suspended for this first leg against AZ. And look, genuinely, I'd have probably gone for a Galatasaray win, bare minimum a draw if all of those players had been fit. But with those players all being suspended, it puts a massive emphasis on AZ to get a result here. It's also worth noting that these sides actually met on match day 5. This exact fixture, AZ against Galatasaray. We saw this a couple of times in our Champions League video yesterday. This exact fixture has already happened, and on that night on match day 5, the game ended 1-1. So again, with these players now suspended, you've got to fancy AZ to get a result here. Let's not forget that they did also lose Galatasaray on match day 8 away to Ajax. So they've got precedent of going to Holland and losing as well. That said, AZ were the side that lost 4-3 to Ferencvaros in that game that we mentioned earlier, but have won all 3 of their domestic games since, and I think they're going to be full of confidence coming into this. To be fair, Galatasaray have also won all of their domestic games since that match day 8 defeat, but I've said it enough times, I just think with that many key players missing from their starting lineup, I've got to fancy AZ to get the result in this opening leg, and maybe will it be enough to see them over the line back in Turkey next week? We shall see. But I'm going for a 2-1 victory to AZ Alkmaar. Next up, it is Porto taking on Roma. And as predicted, when it mattered, Porto did get the result on match day 8. There were a lot of people that didn't expect them to do it, but I did back them to get the result, and they did. However, 2 more draws since that match day 8 victory means that Porto now only have 1 win in their last 8 matches in all competitions, and then over deadline day weekend sold Nico Gonzalez to Manchester City for 60 million and Galeno to, I can't remember if it was Saudi Arabia or Qatar, but their star player Galeno was sold for 50 million away from them as well, and they did not replace either of them. They brought 110 million in and didn't spend it on anyone significant. So I don't really know what's going on with Porto at the moment, but they are really, really struggling. Meanwhile, Roma, on the other hand, have 4 wins, 2 draws and 2 defeats across those same 8 games, where Porto only have 1 win. But it's also worth noting that Roma haven't won a single away game in Europe so far this season, and in fact haven't got that many away wins in all competitions so far this season. So that's why I think Porto may still have a decent chance coming into this. In terms of injuries and suspensions for Porto, there are no fresh concerns coming into this, so they'll have the same team that they had available for them at the weekend to come into this. For Roma, it looks like Mats Hummels is going to be unavailable for them. He went off in their defeat to AC Milan a couple of weeks ago and didn't feature at the weekend, so I don't expect him to be available for this one. To be honest, on paper, I would say Roma are the stronger side here, but as I've already mentioned, their away record does not fill me with any confidence to go for them for the result in this game. I'd probably expect them to get the result over the 2 legs, but I don't fancy them tonight. But I also don't fancy Porto to get the win either, with how poor they've been recently, which only leaves one possible result, and that is a draw, and I'm going for a 1-1 between Porto and Roma. Now we have Twente and Bodo Glimt, like with the Fenerbahce and Anderlecht, the furthest possible split that they could possibly have in terms of where they finished to where they are now playing against each other, 23rd against 9th. And for Bodo, like with Midtjylland, no competitive matches since their 1-1 draw with Nice on match day 8. But the good news for them is that Twente have played 2 since their game on match day 8, and they've drawn them both. So they're still not on the best of run themselves. To be fair to them, their game on match day 8 was against Besiktas, a match that they won to steal Besiktas' spot in these playoffs. They eliminated them, they snuck into 23rd, which has earned them this opportunity. And it's also worth noting that at home, Twente haven't lost a single game since November. But it's also worth noting that in all competitions all season long, Bodo have only lost 3 games away from home, but they have had a fair amount of draws. So again, it makes it so tough to call. Bodo have had a fantastic tournament in this Europa League so far. They were well worth their 9th place finish. Not only that, they have no fresh injuries or suspensions coming into this. However, their star striker, their top scorer, I can't say his name properly, it's like Horge or Hauge. He has been sold to Eintracht Frankfurt, a fellow Europa League side, for, well, he's just been sold, say for the remainder of the season. He has been sold. He is no longer a Bodo Glimt player. So it's going to be harder for them to get goals without him. But I would still expect there to be goals in this match, because over the last 7 matches, Bodo have not kept any clean sheets and Twente have only kept 1. So expect there to be a fair amount of goals in this match. Certainly don't expect there to be a clean sheet in this match. I still think it's going to be a tough one to call, though. I think Twente have earned their spot and Bodo have earned their spot. They've both got pretty decent home and away records, respectively. So I'm going for a 2-2 in this one. Like I say, expect there to be goals in this. Definitely either side could take this first leg one way or another. I think if Bodo get at least a draw, they'll end up winning the second leg regardless. So for Twente, it's must win, but I think it's going to end up being a draw. And then finally, the last game sees the battle of the 4-letter abbreviations. It's PAOK against FCSB. And look, for PAOK, they lost to Real Sociedad on that final match day, and they backed it up by losing again at home to AAK Athens. But to be fair to them, they bounced back with a nice 5-0 win at the weekend. For SB, they are 3 games unbeaten domestically following their 2-0 defeat at Old Trafford, where I did mention it in the post-match reaction. I was a little bit disappointed. I did expect a little bit more from them. But this is another match that we have already seen this season. And for the 5th time across the 2 videos so far, it's happened this exact way. PAOK against FCFB was the match on match day 2. And on that day, it was a 1-0 victory to the visitors, who won that match with 10 men. So they're going to be full of confidence travelling back here for this match, knowing that they've already been able to get the result with 10, surely they'll be able to get the result with 11. Well, what I would say is that since then, PAOK in general have been performing better. They've got themselves from way out of the elimination into the playoffs. To be fair, they did nearly slip back out with that defeat to Sociedad, but overall, they are playing some better stuff. But we know defensively, SB are a very, very strong side. And PAOK do have a fair few injuries. The likes of Dejan Lovren, Timuri Bakayoko, Pavlenka, their goalkeeper, are still very doubtful for this match. To be fair, all of them could make it, but they're all listed as sort of major doubts. Whereas for SB, their only listed absentee is Alaru. He is definitely going to be missing for this one, it seems. The real question is, are PAOK going to score? We know how FC are going to do this. They're going to sit in deep. They're going to try and hit them on counters like they did in the match on match day 2. But I'm just not convinced it's going to go the same way. We're now talking about a 2-legged tie rather than a one-off match. Obviously, the approach will be the same, but I actually think the most realistic scoreline here is a 0-0 draw. I just think it's going to be a washout. I think it's going to be a complete lockdown, try and get it back to the home tie and then go for it there. I don't think there's any need for SB to go for it in this opening game. But, like I say, PAOK are definitely playing some better football, and an early goal one way or another could seriously see this game open up. But I don't see it happening. I'm going for a 0-0 draw, and I hate going for 0-0 draws because it inevitably ends in an early goal for one side. But that is going to be it for today's video. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know anything that you think I've missed, and don't forget to check out my Premier League bonus video coming at you at lunchtime today. Thank you very much for watching as always. I'll be back same time tomorrow to do this all over again for the Europa Conference League playoff first legs. So thank you very much for watching once again, and I'll see you very soon.